Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode number 445. And much like Peter, I'm not sure the Doctor would do mini golf and sushi either. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
I suppose it depends on which Doctor.
Yeah,
the 11th I could totally see doing mini golf.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, actually.
And sushi.
And probably sushi.
I don't know. It's fish fingers and custard, sushi. Yeah.
Well, it was just during the regeneration, though.
Yeah, but he still preferred fish fingers and custard later.
That's true.
Maybe sushi and custard.
Yeah.
I think I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
You guys do anything fun this week?
For the record, I am not trying that on the podcast. I just want to put that out there now before anybody gets any ideas about a challenge or a listener thing and a prize. No, not happening.
Sean, did you do anything this week?
I watched Frankenstein.
The original?
The original, which I'd never seen.
You'd never seen that one?
Nope. I missed out. I told you I missed out on all of
What kind of movie buff are you?
It was a horror movie. I didn't watch it. I'm just now catching up on all these.
Well, what'd you think of it?
It's iconic and amazing for what it is. It's unfortunate that I'm catching it so late because there have been so many other variants of Frankenstein, and quite honestly, almost all of them have been better. They've all done the story, and they've all, taken those bits and pieces of Frankenstein and done it, that well, but then fleshed it out and done a lot more.
So that's funny because I don't think anybody's done Frankenstein as well as the original, or I even would go as far to say the Hammer horror film.
Well, let's see, I haven't seen those either, but Young Frankenstein, I mean, that was the one I grew up with. That's the one I'd seen, and I knew they were spoofing it, but I didn't realize that they weren't really spoofing it. They just did Frankenstein.
Right.
Just did it as a comedy.
There are some jokes, but even the stuff that
it serves
seems like a joke is not. No, it's in the movie.
It serves as a rehash, but quasi sequel as well. I say quasi sequel because it's not officially linked. But anything else?
No, that was pretty much it.
We watched The Secret Life of Pets 2. It was okay. I wouldn't give a huge.
You sure you don't watch anything else?
Harrison Ford was born to voice animated critters, and I don't understand why it's taken him this long to do it. He was the best part of that movie.
I was really impressed that they didn't rehash a lot of stuff from the first one. That it wasn't just the same jokes trotted back out and in a new context. That they did something different with it. And some of it I thought was pretty good. I really liked the stuff with Max and his owner's son and going out to the farm. Everything else was kind of meh.
I thought it was a funnier movie than the first one.
I haven't seen the first one, and I have no desire to see the first one or the second one. Someday, I'm sure.
Gemma actually kind of paid attention to it. So that's why we watched this. We thought she might like it.
Anything else?
That's all we did. What about you, Glenn?
Same old. Watched a couple movies that we're going to review.
We went to World's Fun on Saturday. Took Shy.
Caitlin had a vocal concert tonight. So, all right. Well, let's move on to news.
We start off with some sad news. Stephen Moore has passed away. He played the Silurian Eldane in Cold Blood, Hungry Earth, and then later in The Wedding of River Song. Right?
Oh, that's right. He did come back for that one.
Was that the name of the episode?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
doing that one from memory because it's not in this article.
With Churchill and the...
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that one.
He also voiced Marvin the Paranoid Android in the radio and television adaptations of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Our thoughts go out to his families. In other news, a little happier news, Doctor Who will have a presence at the London Comic Con this year. They have announced that there will be at least 4 different panels, including one on the collection, which is about the box sets, and they get to see
The Blu-ray.
the
box
Blu-ray
set.
box sets. They get to see some of the bonus features of season 26 before anybody else. There's going to be one about publishing, one remembering Terrence Dix, one about the new Edge of Time VR game, and the big one, in my opinion, is one about the animations, where they talk about the upcoming The Faceless Ones, show a clip of The Faceless Ones, and according to the description, world first announcement of new animation with a clip. So we get to find out what next story they're doing.
Woot.
This is all in 2 weekends, October 25th through the 26th.
As always, if any of our listeners are going to be at this con, we extend the invitation for you, too, to be a roving on the street reporter for Traveling the Vortex. And we will happily take your news and provide you an outlet for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
So I have to say that I know it's completely out of character and not going to happen, but the collection panel, I would really like them to walk out on stage and project a gigantic map, like the Marvel movies do, of what box set is coming out in what year and in what order.
The release schedule.
You know, for the next phase 4 of Doctor Who box sets.
Right.
I think that would be cool.
That would be cool.
What do you think they're going to animate next?
You think they're going to keep going with Troughton? They've been on a big kick. I'm kind of surprised they're doing Faceless Ones still, so I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, if they're shooting for getting a Troughton season, Troughton season out sometime, they might be gearing. I mean, so what? I sort of think maybe it's going to be Evil of the Daleks. Although in that season, I suppose we have Power now. We don't have Highlanders. We do have Underwater Menace, albeit recons with that one. The Moon Base.
Watch, that's what they're going to announce. Underwater Menace.
We have the Moon Base.
We have
now,
the Moon
right?
Base.
Macra Terror is finished. Faceless Ones is coming out. So Evil is really the only one left besides Highlanders in that series.
It would make sense that Evil would be the next one.
Season 5 would be Tomb, which exists. Abominable Snowman, which doesn't, with the exception of episode 2. Ice Warriors is finished. Enemy is back. Web is back, and Fury is not. So, actually, Wheel in Space.
Web is back -1.
Right. Wheel in Space is but I was kind of thinking that it had recons. That's why I said Underwater Menace.
That's had a release.
Yeah. Wheel in Space technically has had a release because they did the
Did they ever do a
reconstruction
DVD in the
for.
UK?
No, they haven't. They've done a reconstruction for BritBox, but they have it available if they decide to do that.
Yeah.
Space Pirates is the only one missing from season 6.
That would get them a
So
whole
what-
season to re-release.
So do you think that they'll announce that they're animating that so that they can release Troughton's? Because that's the only one that has not seen a release in a Troughton season. Space Pirates.
Yeah.
A bunch
I'm putting
of people,
my money down on Space
I
Pirates.
bet a bunch of people balk, but I bet because that one, common fan perception is that it's not a good story, but we have found that you can't rely on common,
you really can't.
fan perception, because if that was the case, nobody would have liked
Talons.
Enemy of the World, and
yeah.
Enemy of the World ended up being great, and a lot of people, reveled in it. So, and that was one of the ones that was supposedly one of the clunkers. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Is it possible that we're just on that high of having new Who back? New
I don't
old
know.
Who back?
I have revisited Enemy of the World, and it still stands up as a good.
We have
really
too.
good
I mean,
story,
it's
so.
every time I go back and rewatch it, it's like, man, this is great.
Well, with the release of Mission to the Unknown as the remounts, I
Yeah.
wonder if they'll do the Daleks Master Plan.
I think that challenge for that one would be
12 parts.
well, no.
Well, the length, yeah.
They wouldn't have to do 12 because
There's only what,
3 of
two?
those exist. No, 3. Escape Switch, Dave Armageddon, and Counterplot all exist. They probably likely would not animate or even bother with Feast of Stephen because it's really not necessary. So that would leave you with what 5, and then if they released Mission to the Unknown on that set, then they may just call that good.
That might get its own just Blu-ray set.
Yeah, well, if it does it, if they do the remake in that season, Galaxy 4 technically has a recon, although it's an abbreviated one that was on what disc was that on?
The Aztecs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mission Unknown's
But it was
gone.
good.
Mythmakers is gone. We don't have any of the Mythmakers.
Most of this season.
The Celestial Toymaker doesn't exist. Savages doesn't exist. I guess that's just those 4 particular stories.
Yeah.
So if they did that, Keith might be right. They might decide to do Dalek's Master Plan as its own thing. So
who knows? I guess we'll find out in a couple weeks.
yeah,
I think I put my money on the Troughton one just because there's some heavy hitters in that season that I bet they would like to get out in the hands of.
I think you're right,
fans.
especially since they've got a good chunk of those already animated. So
Yeah.
all right, what else is in the news?
That's it. That's all that's in the news. All that's fit to print.
All right, well, shall we move on to feedback?
Our feedback this week comes from Jamie.
Jamie says, "Hello, Vortexers. I'm just going to cut to the chase and get straight to my comments. Episode 146, the 2013 missing episodes, Enemy of the World and Web of Fear. I have to admit, I prefer Enemy of the World. Web of Fear was good, but I barely remember any of it. Enemy was very memorable. Troughton in the dual role, very James Bond-like plot, very memorable villain. Milton Johns as a henchman. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I wonder if they'll ever animate the still missing episode of Web of Fear for a special edition DVD or Blu-ray release. I understand why they used the retcon at the time, especially to quickly get it out for iTunes, but feel this would be a prime candidate for animation. It's just a single episode, enough time has gone by since the initial DVD release, and I'll take the animation over retcon any day. I took audio over retcon anyway. Ghostlight. It's been a while since I've seen this. I remember it being a bit confusing, but still fun at times. I remember the things you hate speech, and that annoying song. But otherwise...
That song's not annoying. It's very charming.
As for the author Mark Platt, I usually enjoy his work. Spare Parts and The Civil Turk were excellent, and I quite enjoyed The Butcher of Brisbane and The Cradle of the Snake. I suspect that behind-the-scenes drama of the time may have affected Ghostlight negatively. Fires of Vulcan. I enjoyed this story, but while it's a good story and it really gives Mel a chance to shine, I find it boring and had trouble getting through the first half.
I can see that. I really enjoyed.
You had the same feeling, didn't you?
I really enjoyed that story, but I can see that from the first half of that there was a lot of setup to that.
Yeah.
On to episode 147 and the Ninth Doctor. I really don't remember that much of the Revisited. I agree that while it's great for introductions to the Doctor, they're all kind of lackluster. Caitlin's Ninth Doctor retrospective was great, very well done. As for my retrospective of the Ninth...
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brought back
That
some...
was right about then.
As for my retrospective of the Ninth Doctor's era, I enjoyed the Ninth Doctor. He was very well done, both in writing and acting. I do think we could have gotten another season with him. Just a handful of novels, a comic run, a few audio stories now. But there is more than 13 episodes. On the other hand, when discussing a second season, I'm torn. I would have loved to have seen another season, seen what Eccleston would have done with the Doctor. While on the flip side, the way he went out was fantastic. In some ways it was perfect, and I wouldn't want to change it. Chris, despite his negativity about the show, played the lone survivor war veteran to perfection. I would love for Big Finish to be able to secure him for some audios with Rose and then with Jack. I wouldn't say 9 is a favorite Doctor, but he's still good with a rather short run. His biggest claim to fame is he's responsible for the return of Doctor Who being a success that has lasted 14 years and will hopefully continue for many more. Episode 148. Enjoyed the opening with the Moody Blues. I'm not a big Halloween fan for Celebration, so this book hasn't moved up real high on my list to read. As for Deathsteel, it sounds like a bit like Midnight. I have listened to this one, but it's been quite a while. You mentioned liking Catherine Tate's reading of the story, and I would direct you to the 10th Doctor audio exclusives such as Dead Air and Last Voyage, part of the new Doctor adventures. Episode 149, Terror of the Zygons. I really enjoyed this story. Found the brig in a kilt hysterical. The Zygons are one of the better designed classic Who monsters and have been done well in their appearances over the years. That is an interesting opinion, Jamie, because I think most of fandom disagrees with you. I think they're cool, but I don't know that many others do. They're kind of always lambasted. In fact, we were concerned when we heard that the Zygons might be in the 50th.
Are they lambasted?
Yeah. Aren't they? The giant suckers and...
I mean, I think they don't... I don't think they get any more kidding than some other Doctor Who monsters, but... Yeah, maybe
it's the Loch Ness Monster aspect.
I think that's what a lot of people think is cheese.
I, too, also enjoy Benton and would like to point out he has appeared on audio. Unit Assembled springs to mind, with at least one companion chronicle. I can't wait to get to more Benton. Episode 150. Enjoyed your comments on Thor: The Dark World, one of my least favorite MCU films. Christopher Eccleston was nearly unrecognizable and just kind of boring. On the other hand, I believe you guys predicted both appearances of Spider-Man in the MCU and Disney's buyout of Fox. Well, I'm going to have to go back and listen to 150.
Well, aren't we good?
The Led Zeppelin feedback song. Impressive. Most impressive. Good job, Glenn, and thanks, Scott, for suggesting it. I enjoyed the 10th issue of Prisoners of Time. It was just fun. The Dominators were used effectively. The art was excellent. Would love it if you guys were to start reviewing Doctor Who magazine comic stories. As for the Daemons, see what I did there? I enjoyed this one, but I feel it wasn't a favorite. Everyone was good, but for whatever reason, it just didn't stick with me. And finally, I'd like to broach a subject that might be worth a full episode. What does the Doctor Who feel? Oftentimes you, and I use the term you very loosely, will be watching an episode or serial, or even listening to an audio or novel or comic. You finish and think, that really didn't feel like Doctor Who. So what is that this feels like Doctor Who? The whole concept of Doctor Who is one of experimentation and renewal. The early years were very experimental with a wide spectrum of concepts. You can have pure historicals, vampire stories, hard sci-fi, and who knows what else. Is there a Doctor Who feel at all? What is the difference between not feeling like Who and just being a bad story? You can have a story essentially Who by numbers that's awful, and a story that makes you wonder if you're even really watching Doctor Who that's awesome. And again, part of it's all in the eye of the beholder, and often comes down to personal preference. Talons of Wen-Chiang is a prime example that's perceived to be one of the best, and yet you guys, and me, don't see what's so good that everyone raves about. Anyway, that's it for now. Keep it up. Jamie.
I think you make an interesting point. I've often thought about that when sometimes we say, it just doesn't feel like Doctor Who. But I think I think that there are a lot of bad stories, too, that still feel like Doctor Who. And I think it's because of that Who by numbers idea of there's a lot of familiarity in a story that it really feels like a Doctor Who story. And it is subjective to the individual because I think stories that are reminiscent of when I was watching Doctor Who in the 80s, the Tom Baker, Peter Davison, those stories for me is what cemented what Doctor Who is. And yes, there's some variation in themes, but there's always still kind of a feel because those actors put such a stamp on those. And so I think that because that's my familiarity, that's my gauge for what feels like Doctor Who. I think also the new series, probably Eccleston and Tennant, kind of formulated what the new series should feel like as Doctor Who for me as well. But he's absolutely right. It's always been experimental. It's always been very, changing in theme and tone and things like that. Yeah. So there really is. It is kind of unfair to say, well, it doesn't feel like Doctor Who. But I think also the ideals of the Doctor have to be there in order for it to feel like Doctor Who in some cases too. So there's a varying degree.
For me, that's the biggest thing is the ideals of the Doctor and the ideals of the show need to be there for it to feel like Doctor Who.
The core ideals.
Yeah.
I agree.
We'll have to investigate that further.
Thank you, Jamie, for that too. I think that was well said too. All right, well, shall we move on to our reviews?
The Airzone Solution It's the near future, and environmental catastrophe looms. The public is given gas masks as the toxic air alerts increase, and it looks like the Earth is slowly dying. The British government turn over the problem to the services of the big but secret Airzone Corporation. Reporter Al Dunbar investigates, and after discovering the solution that Airzone Corp is planning, he dies. Spoilers. Wow, Amazon, thanks.
Yeah, no kidding.
I got nothing for you.
There's no dun dun dun.
There
Sean,
is
what'd you
definitely not a dun. It is a lot of fun to see this particular group of actors together in this way, playing not these characters. It is quite disturbing at times to see certain of these actors together playing scenes that you would not expect them to play. And most of it was enjoyable from the acting standpoint. This is a terrible script. I'm shocked because it's written by Briggs. It's Nicholas Briggs, isn't it?
I didn't think he wrote it.
I didn't think he wrote it either.
I thought for sure I saw that.
Oh, it sure is written by Nicholas Briggs.
And so, obviously he gets better.
A lot.
A lot. And I wonder if it's just one of those things that maybe it just didn't translate well. Maybe the ideas were there, but they couldn't get them across on screen because, wow, this one was rough. And there's so many little idiosyncrasies that are just wrong that wind up piling up into being big things that become wrong with it as it goes on. So yeah, I was glad it was only an hour and change.
Yeah, I was just saying it was a little over 65 minutes. Keith, what'd you think?
I thought it was okay. I don't know if I'd go as far as Sean, but I thought there were some cool ideas in it that almost felt like it was an idea he had for a Doctor Who story and had to strip the Doctor out of it, and so he had to come up with something else. And I do agree that the acting is very fun to watch, seeing these people play different characters than we're used to. I think Colin Baker is a fantastic weatherman. I think that is perfect casting for him. And everybody else kind of goes along and plays their parts, I think, really well. Seeing Nicola Bryant's and Colin together was a bit shocking. And I kind of just chuckled because, it's the Doctor and Perry. So
did you know they had that scene together? Had you guys heard?
I didn't know.
I didn't know.
In fact, I quite honestly, I went through.
I wasn't sure that was Perry at first.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. I went through a good chunk of the movie, not really aware of it, but man, she sounded familiar. And then Mel went, "She really sounds familiar. Is that Perry?" And that's when I went, click. Oh yeah, that is Nicola Bryant. Oh my God. And
it wasn't that late for me. It was, you kind of got a glimpse of her before that scene, and then I wasn't entirely clear once the scene started who it was. And then later, the next scene, and look, that's Nicola Bryant. Okay.
I tend to forget that she's not American. So when she's speaking with an English accent, it's kind of, you are a different person.
Yeah.
I was really surprised to see Alan Cumming in it.
Yeah, that was the big shock for me because I knew a lot about this movie. I hadn't seen it, but I knew a lot about this movie, but had no idea that Alan Cumming was in it. In fact, he showed up on screen once, and I went, no, because Alan Cumming is Alan Cumming. When you see him, you know it's Alan Cumming. But he has some very, what you think, quintessential British features. And so I have seen people that sort of look like Alan Cumming, and he was just young enough in this that I thought maybe that's not Alan Cumming, but then again, he's just young enough, and this is just early enough that maybe he did do this as an acting gig, and because this would have been before the James Bond Goldeneye, would have been around.
This was just after the show was hiatus forever.
Yeah,
93.
Yeah. 93. So.
Oh, was it 93?
Yeah, it was
a lot later than I thought it was.
Yeah, 4 years. But So I kind of thought, okay, and I really did have to go to Wikipedia and go, yeah, that sure enough is Alan Cumming.
I'm sorry.
2 years later, he's in Goldeneye.
Yeah, I liked this movie.
Really?
Yeah. No. Now I'm coming from it from a little different perspective, so I can appreciate the reason why I probably liked it. So I've known about this film for a long time, and I knew that it was a BBV, and I knew that it had all of these actors in it, and I even knew about I'd heard about the infamous Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant scene. And so I was very prepared to go into this because we've watched some BBV stories, which have, in my opinion, some of them have been pretty good that I've enjoyed. Downtime, fantastic. But there's been some of them that we've watched. I think Autons were, or not Autons, those are, but
Zygon being
ones.
you just isn't enough.
I think those are BBV. So we've seen some that I thought, it just, sometimes they feel like they're trying, but they don't quite hit the mark. And so, I've seen Shakedown, which in Shakedown I quite enjoyed, but more from the fact that it connects to Doctor Who nostalgically. But I knew going into this one that BBV does some, pretty low quality work as far as, they were early on and they were, quasi amateur, quasi professional. So I set the bar really super low for this one because I've been avoiding watching this one as well, knowing what I know about it. And I just, maybe I just turned my brain off, but I really, I like the story. The story is good. It's very intriguing. I think that it suffers from its wrap up at the end. I don't think it quite hits the mark there.
Because the mystery and the build up I thought was really well done.
Yeah. But it also really feels like these kind of 80s and 90s British, drama thrillers that were always on PBS that I'd catch from time to time. Have seen even more recently when we started seeing all the different streaming networks. So it really kind of felt in line with that style of storytelling. And I thought Colin Baker just nailed the mark. He was the best thing about this.
Oh, very much so.
And he really feels like the star of this, even though we've got, 4 of the actors that played the Doctor in this. Now, Pertwee,
more of a cameo.
And it really is. And I think part of that comes down to the fact that they had this already written, prepared, and set out. And then he heard that they were doing it. And he came to, I don't know if he came to Bill Braggs or if he came to Nicholas Briggs and said, why am I not in this? And so they added him later. And so that's why some of the parts kind of feel like they're spliced in. Maybe I noticed it because I knew that was the story behind it. Maybe it didn't feel spliced in. Maybe he felt like he was supposed to be there.
I've already retconned that, though. My headcanon is that actually is, in fact, the third Doctor.
That is the Doctor.
Right, yeah.
And that he's making sure
knows.
that these events go the way, that they're supposed to.
But no, it's had so much going against it for me, knowing that we weren't going to have any Doctor Who references, knowing that these guys weren't playing the Doctors, they were playing other characters. And just, I really sat down and I thought it was a terrific movie. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. It was fun to see all these guys play together. It was also kind of fun to see them play a little bit against type. I think even McCoy, who probably was the most typecast in my opinion, that seems like that didn't seem very Seventh Doctor like, but it seemed very much what, I don't know, maybe like McCoy would be kind of in real life if he wasn't an actor. He'd be kind of that, not paranoid eco warrior, but I think that
I totally think he would.
I think he just but very, very fast talking, quick witted, that kind of that sort of thing. Colin Baker being very kind of
See, I think he was kind of cast towards the Sixth Doctor, but rises above it in his performance.
Yeah, well,
because he comes off initially very kind of brash and self-assured and kind of a lot of things that the Sixth Doctor is, very full of himself.
I'd take brash out of that, but I would say full of himself and
self-assured.
Self-assured,
and he very much is, I'm the best, I know what I'm doing. But
a lot of little humorous moments too, when he's on
right
early on until he's
a little self-deprecating, but
and I think even Peter Davison, maybe there's a spark of what you expect from Peter Davison.
There's just such a little bit of Peter Davison in it that
Yeah.
it's hard to tell.
Well, yeah,
He's not in it very long.
I don't know. I mean,
As truly himself, because I'm not sure what to make of
Yeah,
him
I
as a ghost.
suppose
I
so.
felt bad, but watching Peter Davison, he was really, really trying to be this gung ho, hardcore investigative reporter, and I just wasn't buying it.
He also felt like he should have been 10 years younger. Like he should have been a young, plucky Jimmy Olsen type character instead of
maybe.
Peter Davison. You know,
But
Yeah.
it's just, I think it's just because Peter Davison is so affable. He's just such a nice guy, and everything I have seen him in previously, from Doctor Who to All Creatures Great and Small, he's been the nice guy. And so when he's up there swearing and throwing things around and trying to, it's like, you're not a tough guy, dude. I'm just not buying it.
well, yeah. I don't know. He still came across as a nice guy in this, though. It was a nice guy that couldn't really push for what he was.
he was too nice of a
Yeah,
guy.
exactly.
So,
That was the problem. Is he was too
So
nice
he
of a
was
guy.
killed.
Yeah, that was a shock. I honestly was not expecting that turn. Oh,
Also, didn't expect Michael Wisher in this
yeah.
as the. I guess he was head of the Ministry of Environment.
The
I guess.
secretary of the
Secretary of
environment.
Didn't expect that at all. That was another surprise for me. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that's who that was.
I didn't recognize him at first.
Yeah, well, I saw him and I kept looking at him, and it was one of those where I know the face, and then I was obviously,
Yeah.
that's why I know who this is. Gosh, no, I enjoyed it. I was a little hesitant to, we had to kind of, I think we felt like we needed to settle on this one because there's really no film that any of these three guys are in that really fit the category of what we were doing. But I think the whole ghost element of this
It kinda worked.
made it work for being, it's obviously an environmental thriller, but it's got some supernatural to it, and I thought it worked really well.
Yeah.
So, a thumbs up from me. It's not one that I would watch, although being at 65 minutes, it makes it palatable to watch again. But it's probably not one that I would watch again soon. But it is one that I would watch again down the line and probably enjoy it as much. And I thought I would be bothered by the Sixth Doctor and Perry in bed. But I thought that they played off of each other so well. And they were so... Nicola Bryant was so different from Dean Perry
yes.
that it bothered me none. That to me these were two people that were in a relationship, that were in love, and I didn't see, oh, that's creepy that Colin Baker is in bed with Nicola Bryant. It did not bother me.
Totally bought it until later when I realized, oh, that's Nicola Bryant. Then it was like, oh, but
I knew
at that point it was
going in,
already over.
And I was also prepared for it because I knew that was a scene. I didn't realize it was 3 scenes, but
well, and we talk about Colin being the star and how, I mean, he really does carry this film, and it's a lot of it's through the charisma of his character that he's putting on screen with this weatherman who becomes kind of obsessed with finding this truth out. But it's in the quiet scenes with, as you mentioned, the relationship.
She carries a lot of it.
Nicola carries it. She is really the anchor of all of the plot stuff.
yeah.
Well, even she contributes a lot to the plot stuff because she kind of brings stuff to his attention.
Right.
And he takes the ball and runs with it.
Yeah, and so, yeah, you're right. I don't want to say it that way, but
Well, and she said she's the one that believes him and sets him on the path when they go to the house the first time, the keys in the jar, blah, blah, blah. And so, but then she does kind of, she stepped back because she's got something else she's got to work on. She's going to prepare for this forum that's coming up, but does put him on the path with the materials that could help him. So, yeah, no, I agree. And then also later, her supporting him and backing him up when, he's going up there and he's, I have to do this. And she's like, okay, yes, do it.
yeah.
So,
But yeah, no, she was truly wonderful, and the pairing between the two of them was great, and you can tell if you've never seen them at a convention together, that they have this fantastic off-camera relationship as well. That they're just the best of friends.
yeah.
But I thought that really shone through here. That I felt like they were able to kind of tap into that to play this couple, which was really great. So yeah, that I don't want to say that I don't want to come across that I hated it.
No, I don't think you're coming across that way.
It just,
yeah.
there were just a bunch of little things like, okay, so we've got this toxic air, and everybody gets a gas mask, but then nobody wears them through the whole movie. It's like, I mean, I get it. You don't want to cover your
one
actors.
little area.
Yeah, I get it. You don't want to cover up your actors with this thing.
There were a lot of times that they had the masks on.
No,
It was also yeah.
there
In
were
fact,
a
there was
Only when they weren't talking.
Well, yeah, but
there was a very small handful, and it was almost never the main
But they
group.
also pointed out that it was only certain times of day.
In
That was part of the
areas
weathercraft,
London.
and only in certain areas that was needed in certain times. So
Yeah, you've got Colin fear-mongering up there going,
it was very-
always keep your mask handy and keep it on you because it's going to be bad tomorrow. And then they drive all over town with no masks on. And I'm just thinking to
you're
myself...
nitpicking now.
No, I'm not.
I think it was very obvious that this is...
That to me is one of those, your world building.
There was those one people that were wearing the masks in the street. The woman almost lost hers, and then a car ran over it and smashed it.
Yeah. And then we never see them again. So it's like, well, it's only for these
because she
people in
died.
these areas.
She died in the
Yeah, well...
Our
I'm just
main
saying
cast
that-
never went to bad areas.
I think you're.
I'm
I don't
just
think it's
saying that-
fair. I don't think it's a fair.
No,
assessment.
I'm just saying that if you're going to world build in that manner, it's already a science fiction film. Come up with a rebreather or something that doesn't block the actor's face, that you can, a patch or something. Like
I don't know.
Like a gill.
I kind of liken
then,
it. I kind of liken it to China. They don't always wear the masks over there. They do frequently, but they don't always, and there are certain conditions where they don't need them. And I think.
Well, but okay, so
I
like
think you're nitpicking.
the scene where Colin is driven out in the middle of nowhere and then thrown out of the car, and he stands there for a minute, like, "Oh man, what do I do now?" We just saw a guy that was found 20 miles from. Peter Davison was driven 20 miles from his house and found out in the gunk, and they thought that's what killed him.
Right.
But he's not fazed by it at all. And apparently he walks back to town okay.
Well, he was fazed by it because they got attacked, but they weren't the target. It was the girl that they were harboring.
Right, but I mean, he's not now concerned that I am in the wilderness with no mask.
He since then has realized that
he's the
toxics
weatherman. He
didn't
knows
kill
where
him.
he's at. Yeah.
I just thought they made a really big deal out of it because that was the hook of the whole environmental crisis plot, and then didn't pay off enough with it. And then come back with the ending and the quick wrap up with, oh, this is what they're doing, is they're implanting these things into people, and you're going to wind up with a wide neck and being able to filter that out.
I didn't see the twist of Alan Cumming being MI5 either.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
Your points are invalid. All right. So
Oh, the other thing we haven't talked about is Nicholas Briggs not only wrote it, he acted in it.
yeah,
too.
I think he did a good job.
Yeah.
I was very convinced. He's afraid to say anything now.
Yeah,
I'm going to shoot him down.
Yep. Nick's always good as an actor. I mean,
He really is. I think also because he wrote this, and I didn't realize this until you brought it up, but I think because he was most familiar with it, he probably had the best grasp on his character as well.
Yeah.
The other guys were handed this material and did a great job, but you kind of have to give an actor credit for writing his own material. You know how it's going to be performed, no matter how it's directed. You know what you wrote. So.
And the character is a little bit of a one-note character anyways. It's, the hard-nosed news director type character, so it's a little easier to play.
But gets that growth towards the end. I mean, it's not massive growth. He changes his mind and lets them go ahead and stay on.
Yeah, but he also portrays that in a way that, in my opinion, came across as, oh, this will be great TV and good ratings. Not so much, oh yeah, we need to do this to get the information out.
Well,
he was very Perry White.
I think it was a little bit of both, but yeah.
Or Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do it. How many papers we can sell today? How many viewers we going to get? All right, yeah, let's do it. He was very much cut from that cloth and in that mold. I was okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a good job in that role.
All right, anything else about this one?
It wasn't terrible.
So Sean hated it.
I didn't hate it.
Keith thought it was okay, and I loved it. I didn't love it either. But
this is certainly not in the so bad it's good camp that Lair of the White Worm was in.
Well, no, and it's because it's certainly a different even tone and approach, because this one was taking itself seriously, and even if it doesn't feel like it hits the mark, it tried. So I think that's the important thing.
Oh, editing. That was the other thing that was really
amateurish
distracting.
feel to it.
There was a bunch of... Yeah. Which almost made me wonder if there's a longer version of this that they trimmed down to an hour and change.
That could be there. I don't even think the editing was bad. It was almost there were these time jumps that weren't really smooth.
Yeah.
In fact, they would have benefited from some maybe dissolves or something that would have at least put you in the mindset of a change of time instead of a straight cut to another time with the same actors. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think your comment summed it up nicely. It was tolerable. It would be tolerable to watch that again.
Tolerable.
That's where I can go with it.
All right. Well, should we move on to our next one?
Fright Night. When a nice new neighbor moves in next door, Charlie discovers that he is an ancient vampire who preys on the community. Can he save his neighbor from the creature with the help of famous vampire killer Peter Vincent?
Bum, bum, bum.
Did you like it?
I did like it.
I think I suffer from there's nothing like the original. And the problem that I had with this movie, I enjoyed it. It's not one that I could watch over and over again, and it has a lot of problems. But I think the biggest problem with this is the first one is schlocky, and that's why it's charming and endearing to me, because it is schlocky. And this one, while they went for the schlock, it's almost like if you're going to do Fright Night again, let's do something a little different. That's not because this, with the exception of some setting and some character changes, it really does parallel the original film. And you could argue that, well, when you're doing a remake, you want to make it, similar enough that it's recognizable. But I had kind of hoped that it didn't hit exactly all the same beats that I think the first one does. And I think that it's down to Chris Sarandon in the first one is schlocky but believable as a vampire. Colin Farrell in this one is schlocky and isn't taking the part seriously most of the time, or it feels like he's not taking the part seriously. Yeah. It's almost like sometimes it's like he watched Chris Sarandon in the first one and then said, how do I step that up a notch? And that's what it really felt like. So unfortunately, because Farrell's through the heavy through the majority of this film, there's a lot of that. I thought that brought the film down.
Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed by him in the role. And some of that I think is just, I don't like it when he does an American accent in general, and especially when you're kind of I think it would have been a nice touch to have him put on the American accent initially, and then once the discovery that he's an actual vampire, let it drop and show, okay, yeah, I'm really old and I've got this accent that I'm hiding so that nobody asks questions. I thought that would have been a nicer touch than just keeping the American accent, because it just doesn't work for me. I'm taken out of it.
It also bothered me to sit there and watch Anton Yelchin and just thinking, he's not going to be in anything anymore because, he tragically died. And so that was kind of hard because I had forgotten he was in this. And so when it started, and I don't usually have that effect with actors that have passed and I watch them, Alan Rickman, that was tough to watch the first couple of films, but maybe that's the reason why, is because I hadn't seen anything with Anton Yelchin for probably since he died recently.
Probably since Star Trek Beyond. That's
probably right. And so just sitting there having to watch that thinking, oh man, he's no longer around, and he was a really good actor and had a lot of promise, but so that was in the back of my head as well, which that's situational, though. That has nothing
I'm in the exact same boat with you, though.
That has nothing to do with the
I had
quality.
So many feels over the fact that here I am watching Anton, and I really enjoy Anton, and I've liked him in everything that he's been in, and he's such promise as an actor, and he's gone now, and here I am watching him again, and it was tough to get over that. Yeah.
And then I think the other mark is, I think that I like what they did with the Peter Vincent character, which is changing him from a horror movie host late night horror movie host to a illusionist that uses vampire shtick in his show. I liked the idea that they changed that, but I so much liked what Roddy McDowall did with the original character that this wasn't effective enough to have that character in this even though David Tennant did a fine job. In fact, I saw shades of Crawley.
Yeah, so did I.
In him, and I kept thinking, oh, okay, so he must have kind of harvested some of this character for that. But I didn't feel like the character was bold enough until the end. I think David Tennant pulls the character off, but I wanted the revelation of even though Roddy McDowall's character goes through the same thing, where he decides, well, I'm going to help this kid out with what I know, knowledge that I know, but I'm not going to get involved. And then he does get involved, but he also, he goes through the cowardice moment because he recalls the same thing. But I don't know. I think the take that they did with Roddy McDowall's portrayal of Vincent was much better than where they went with this.
How much of that do you think is because Roddy McDowall was older than David Tennant in the role? How much of that can you contribute to age of his portrayal of it? Doesn't seem as cowardice because he's kind of an older guy and doesn't think he can really contribute as much, and then changes his mind at the end.
That's a good point. I have to think about that. I think mine comes down to the fact that I grew up watching Roddy McDowall and I loved him so much.
Well,
everything that I saw him, that I'm holding this nostalgia for it. But maybe I could see that. I could see where that might have
they
played
played the character older, obviously, and he's as opposed to this young hip, magician vampire show.
I agree. I wanted the stage persona that he kind of exhibits. I wanted the long hair rocker. We're going to go out and do this. Okay, let's grab our stuff and go kill vampires. Kind of vampire hunter to show up, and instead he was like, "Nope, done. Going to go hide in my panic room and be over with." And I think maybe I needed a little bit more of a confirmation from him that, when Anton comes back and he's talking to him going, dude, we can help me with this. I wanted him to say, have you seen my performance? I am a fraud. I am well aware of this.
Yes, that would have sold it better.
And that
you're absolutely
makes
right.
the cowardice work for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It was just missing that element of admittance to, it's all a facade. Everything you see is fake. So
because otherwise the self-realization almost comes too late.
They're trying to portray that, I think.
Yeah.
But it's not coming through.
See, I kind of got that impression in their initial conversation, and as he's stripping away all the facial hair,
which
and all
comes
of that,
too soon, in my opinion.
That maybe they should have moved that further back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because as soon as all that came off, and he's like, "They're not real," that to me came across as, I'm a fraud. This is all fake. I'm making it all up. I'm just collecting all this junk because I can, and So
I think in conjunction with
that's
where
why I
it
didn't
comes
have
in
an issue with that.
I think with where it comes in conjunction with the conversation that they're having as he's peeling these layers of his performance off, it almost comes across more like he's just blowing the kid off.
Yeah.
But
I
don't know.
Could go either way.
I think my other issue, and again, I hate to judge a remake based on its original, what it's remaking. But again, there's just so much nostalgia. I just think Evil Ed was... I know why they got McLovin. I never can remember the kid's real name. But
Christopher Mintz-Piece.
Yes, I know why they got him. But it was almost stunt casting because he was in so much stuff at this time as kind of the nerdy kid. It missed the mark for me. And I think it got really bad when the confrontation between Charlie and him at Vincent's place. I don't know, it didn't work for me. He didn't sell it. He, as the nerdy friend that was, gung ho about this is vampire, I bought that. But then when after he's been changed and he's, having the confrontation with Charlie, I just didn't buy it. It didn't work for me at all. And maybe because I don't remember the actor's name, but the kid that played Evil Ed in the original one, again, so creepy and so perfect for the role. So
I was glad that there wasn't a whole... I'm not a big fan of the new Ed. actor, so I was glad he wasn't in it a whole lot.
McLovin.
Yeah, McLovin. Especially, and I think it kind of did benefit from his turning evil in the confrontation not being drawn out throughout the rest of the end of the movie. I kind of expected him to stick around through the climax, and I was glad that they dispatched him early enough that they could move on to deal with Jerry.
Interestingly enough, there is a straight. I haven't seen it, but there was a straight to video sequel to this version of
both.
Well,
right?
yeah, there's one from then too, but this one has a straight to video, and Evil Ed apparently shows up again. It's not the same actor, but the Evil Ed ends up showing up again.
Huh.
And I thought, how did they pull that off?
How does that work? Interesting.
Who's in it?
It's a bunch of people I didn't recognize.
I
mean,
recognize...
none of these actors come back, right?
No, not in the next one. Like I say, it was straight to video. In fact, it barely got greenlit. So, of course,
the same character comes back.
Yeah,
Charlie Brewster's back.
Yeah, the characters return, but it's not any of the same actors or actresses.
Jamie Murray, from Dexter. You'll know her picture if you saw her. Plays the vampire.
Who was she on Dexter?
Lila.
Oh, Lila. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a vampire.
Yep.
No, I thought this movie had a lot of...
Well, we should mention you're coming to this with fresh eyes because you've never seen the original.
I've never seen the original. Mel was quite shocked. She says, "What do you mean you've never seen the original?" I said, "Have you seen the cover of this thing? It's got like this terrifying vampire ghost clown on it." It's like, no, I'm not watching that. I had no idea what it was about.
That terrifying ghost clown is what he looks like in the film at times.
Well, maybe I won't watch it.
No, it's good. It's really well done.
And you know me, I don't. This whole experiment in Beyond the Doctor this time out has been kind of a challenge in some ways because I don't do a lot of horror. But I thought there was a lot of moments that were fun and worked really well. Specifically, he can't come in unless you invite him in, which is one of those almost forgotten nuggets of vampire lore. It seems like. I mean, it's a big deal, but at the same time, it's almost, other than Lost Boys, it doesn't seem like there's a big enough deal made about it.
Yeah.
And so when he comes over and he's kind of just, invite you guys in for a drink, but this place is a mess, and he pauses, and nobody invites him over, and he's standing there waiting. And then later when he comes to get the beers,
I think that confrontation was pretty intense, I thought.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was intense, but it was also, I thought, very laced with humor.
Yeah, yeah.
When they're sitting there and he looks down and the camera keeps panning down to the threshold of the doorway. And I loved it. That part was great. I liked the horror elements of the hidden hallway with the locked doors for all of his victims. That's kind of, yeah.
And the reveal of the trapdoor that goes down into the basement where they're all buried, really cool. And that was really nicely done. Not something I saw coming.
Very cool.
No. Although I think I presumed that he was working on the basement with all the concrete. Well, I figured he was digging the basement up, but I didn't.
By the time we got to the reveal, I had forgotten about that aspect.
The little jail rooms, I didn't expect to have trapdoors to drop into that basement.
Right.
So, yeah.
When they initially dropped the lines of the basement, I just assumed, he was ripping out the basement to either bury himself or his victims so they could rise,
Yeah, same boat. I'd kind of forgotten about it until I got down there. And then it was, the lair.
Yeah.
But obviously, he doesn't hang out in the living room with the Lazy Boy recliner and the TV all the time. He's got to have a lair. And then when the things started coming out of the walls of the lair, like, ugh.
That was pretty cool.
It's funny you were talking about how
Shades of Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
It's funny how you were talking about how it's often forgotten about, needing an invitation to come in, because the writer wrote on Buffy and so worked with Joss very heavily, and there's so much of this movie that seems influenced by that, and I don't know how much I can't remember the original enough to know how much was there previously.
That was the Invitation stuff. Was,
and that's part of overall vampire lore, but even, there's a Scooby Gang reference, and even down to the dusting of them, where you kill a vampire, they turn to ash. That's all stuff Buffy did too. So it's interesting how it's a Buffy writer and a lot of those things are there, even though a lot of them may have come from the original.
The thing is, the reason they're in Buffy is because they're vampire lore.
Right.
But he, in turn, puts a certain spin on them that gives them just enough of a touch so you recognize that those are Buffy references as opposed to vampire references.
Right.
And I agree, because I felt that way through this whole film. It felt like a big screen version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I think is...
And I think even down to some of the humor, that's why, is because she wrote on the show.
the timing of it and things like that.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I think that's a large reason why the remake works as well as it does, is because you got Marty Noxon to write it.
Although I think maybe she's what took the schlock a little too far, but some of that could be relied on the actors too.
Well, on the actors, definitely.
There were times I thought there wasn't enough schlock.
Schlock,
yeah.
The actors too, I think, are part of what makes this so enjoyable, but also part of what makes it kind of schlocky.
Because aside from Jerry, it seems like everyone is taking it pretty seriously.
Oh no, I agree.
And Ed.
I think
especially once Ed becomes a vampire,
I think
doesn't seem to be taking it very seriously.
I think that's probably true. Although that comes across,
but that works well as a character.
Yeah, that comes across very Buffy too, though.
Yeah.
In fact, the way that he portrayed it reminded me of early Buffy, anyway.
Well, and even like a lot of what's her face, the girlfriend, kind of standing up for herself. I don't really remember that from the original.
No.
As much.
This certainly was a written for a more modern era. So.
Yeah.
Did anybody else get wrapped up when she broke out the display case and got the revolver, and they did the close up of the silver bullets?
But
did everybody else kind of go, "Oh yeah," and then once she started firing them, go, "Oh yeah"?
Well, no, that's the brilliant thing.
As soon as she picked that gun up, my first comment was, well, you should learn from Love at First Bite that only works on a werewolf. And she shoots, and he says, werewolves. But what was clever, although I wish she hadn't telegraphed it, I wish she would have just done it. But what was clever is that she grabs the holy water, throws it on, and says vampires, so she knows.
Right.
But I think what screwed that up for me was she looked around like, I've got to look for my next thing. I would have rather her just have known it was there and grab it and throw it and then say vampires, because then it would have given her more credence as being forward thinking about that kind of thing. So
what I really liked about that scene is there are some vampire mythologies where silver does slow them down. Won't necessarily kill them, but you can capture a vampire or tie them down with silver, and they can't move. So
they can be bound in silver. Yes.
Yeah. So the fact that you could shoot one with a silver bullet and seriously damage it, if not kill it, is there in some of the mythologies. So it's a thing of, well, we don't know in this mythology, does silver work? Just like the references to garlic of, who knows if that really is going to make a difference or not.
Well,
it plays with the overall vampire mythology if you know a lot of different stories that have different variations of lore.
Well, it certainly works as a mechanism within this film too, because Peter Vincent is collecting vampire weapons and protections and things like that. So obviously in here there is some effectiveness to silver bullets,
or at least some lore that thinks there is.
Right.
And I was also really excited talking about lore when they were at the side of the highway and he's threatening him with the cross, and Jerry drops the line of, "You got the cross, do you have the faith?" Because I've always loved the idea that the symbol isn't what matters, it's the faith behind the symbol.
Right.
That you could use the Star of David against a vampire just as effectively as a cross if you're Jewish. Yeah. I have always loved that idea, and I thought they were going that direction, and it kind of seemed like they were because it wasn't overly effective. but it still had a little bit of effect, so I wasn't sure where they were trying to land on that decision.
Yeah.
They wanted him to have
A little bit of faith.
just enough faith for it to be a glimmer of hope, but not enough to. This isn't where the movie ends.
Right.
Boy, I sure telegraphed the sign stakes, though, real early on. When she's loading them in her car near the beginning of the movie, I thought, I know what those are going to... I know what's going to happen with one of those, at least. Which only happens halfway through. I kind of maybe thought that would come up later.
The actual resolution of it.
Or near two. But... yeah, I saw those. I thought, those are wooden stakes right there. And sure enough, she uses one.
Oh, and especially when he drops the line just before it. Have you ever been staked before?
Yeah.
And how agonizing it is if you miss the heart.
Yeah. Well, they had to give us that so that when she does stake him, we know why he doesn't die.
Right. Well, and not only that, when he goes to stake Amy later, he knows where to hit her so he doesn't kill her.
Putting it in the heart.
Yeah.
Well, and then having Peter Vincent say when in the final confrontation, go for the heart.
Right. And the fact that in that time you could actually see
it's exposed because he's burning up.
That's a lot easier to hit there.
That was a fun movie.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was good. I was holding it up against something that is from my nostalgic childhood, and it didn't quite get there for me, but.
Well, it's got some marks against it. I mean, we commented a little bit on the 3D effects, which simply do not hold up.
Well, it's hard to watch. When this came out in theaters, was it marketed as a 3D film? I mean,
believe
surely
so.
they must have, but I don't remember it.
I remember it coming out on Blu-ray as 3D.
One of the 3D pushes. So I don't remember that at all. In fact, but having not remembered it, watching and seeing all of the gimmicky type 3D things in it, then I was like, well, this must have been marketed as a 3D
I think
film.
2011 was kind of the height of, push everything needs to be 3D regardless.
Because Avatar was 2009, so
yeah,
everything jumped on that bandwagon pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, they learned really quickly too to kind of marvel at the depth and scope of 3D as opposed to the gimmicky things that they used in the 50s and 60s, which were obviously heavily used in here with the casting of the camera and the pointing.
I can't imagine this in 3D though. It's already dark enough. I can't imagine having 3D glasses on during it
that's
too.
True. That's true. It would have darkened down a lot more.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sean, what do we got to come up on the schedule next week?
Well, we've got a couple more films for our Beyond the Doctor as we continue down this descent path of madness. Second Dr. Patrick Troughton in The Omen, the original.
I worry for you on that one.
How did you hold up on this one, Sean, considering you don't like the horror movie stuff?
On this
Fright Night?
Fright Night was okay.
This is more in the action horror type.
Yeah, this is more.
I think it's the
of,
trippy psychological horrors, or even maybe more the slasher horrors that are.
Yes. I've never really enjoyed the slasher movies, but I've never seen them. Like, it was probably 3 years ago that I saw Halloween for the first time. I've never seen Friday the 13th. I've never seen a Jason's Friday the 13th.
Yep.
Yeah. I've never seen a Jason. I've only seen the one Michael Myers.
But you've seen the Freddy films because did you watch them on our marathon back in the
No,
day?
you and Wade got started early, and I've seen New Nightmare, which of course I didn't get half of it because
it's so self-referential.
But I loved the concept of it.
Yeah, okay.
Which I thought was really cool. But so much of the slasher genre anymore, I feel, is if I go back and watch these films now, I'm older and I'm not going to be hit with it at that same, in that same manner. But the other side of it is I enjoy a good, like a psychological thriller like Hitchcock or something along those lines. But a lot of horror films, as the slasher genre kind of progressed, became gross out horror.
Yeah,
and that's something that I've never, never particularly cared for or enjoyed. And so there was a lot of that kind of ideas, just kind of, nah, that's not my thing. So,
don't watch Terra Firma.
But like I said, I'm making an effort. Like I said, last year I hit a bunch of the big ones. I hit The Shining. I hit Poltergeist. I hit, stuff that I had never. Christine.
You had never seen Poltergeist?
I had never seen all of Poltergeist until last year.
Wow.
So.
Well, good for you.
This has been a 3-year project, and it's ongoing. So.
And now he's finally getting to the Universal monsters.
And finally getting to the Universal monsters.
Huh, I'll be darned.
Which I've got, Invisible Man, The Mummy,
so The Omen,
Creature, and
then
now
what's
Frankenstein.
What's the next one?
So we've got The Omen, and then Matt Smith in Patient Zero,
yes.
which is the zombie one. And the following week, we decided for sure on the
it's kind of
3.
along the lines of 28 Days Later Zombie.
Oh, okay.
We decided all 3 the following week, right?
Yes. Well, we're still trying to get a hold of one, but the
Assuming,
one that we didn't think we were going to get a hold of, we do have. So
right. There's the other version we can watch.
Yeah.
So we've got I, Monster with First Doctor Richard Herndl,
which may get moved.
Oh, it may.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we do have another version.
It's on Daily Motion.
It is on Daily Motion. Yeah. Okay, we're okay.
We've got Afraid of the Dark with 8th Doctor Paul McGann, and then we've got Midnight at Madame Tussauds, or Midnight at the Wax Museum, depending on where you were at, with First Doctor William Hartnell, and that'll be the following week.
If you're following along, good luck getting a hold of that one, because I had to actually buy a copy of that from a dealer who had a copy of it that was ripped because it's out of circulation and out of print. So we were fortunate enough to get a copy of this, but it is not readily available anywhere without jumping through some hoops. So.
And then into November, we're going to do a book review of The Pirate Planet by Douglas Adams and James Goss to finish off our Douglas Adams novel approaches. So you might want to start reading that one if you haven't yet.
Very good. I don't have my notes open. Be sure to check out the website for all of that information and updates as they become available. While you're there, you can click on our Patreon link and consider supporting us. And remember, you can send your comments to feedback@travelingthevortex.com or by clicking on the send feedback link. Until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing ya.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.